Welcome back to a new episode of me reading the book A People's History of American Empire, episode 4, where I read the remaining chapter of chapter 4. And as I say in this series to the guy who recommended this to me, to my friend who recommended this to me, Nicholas Blythe, shout out to you, brother. And now, time for this one. What's up, everybody? It's Zach the Celtics guy here, back with another video, and here with episode 4 of where I read A People's History of American Empire. And again, shout out to Nicholas. Thank you as always for recommending this book to me. It's awesome, and I'm loving it, and I'm really loving this book. I really am. I was on page I think I was on page 100 or something along those. Yeah, I think I was, but I'm just gonna go back to where I was before because I know I was on page 90 when this was going on. So anyway, so let's get right into it. In a private letter, President Wilson wrote a novel defense of this draft. It is in no sense a conscription of the unwilling, but rather a selection from a nation which volunteered en masse. The Espionage Act was used to outlaw any anti-war talk that could be interpreted as discouraging enlistment. No conscription. A similar repressive law was passed after 9/11, the U.S. patronage. Oh my fucking God, you're telling me. That was the one that basically undermined the Constitution in every way, shape, and form. The Fourth Amendment to the Constitution is just not even a thing, just totally not even a fucking thing. Uniting and strengthening America by providing appropriate tools required to intercept and obstruct terrorism Act of 2001 gives the FBI power to spy on citizens, monitor library and medical records. Well, it does liberty as well, and secretly search homes and workplaces. From its title, one would suppose that the Espionage Act was a law against spying. Instead, the U.S. Justice Department secretly empowered private associations to spy on disloyal Americans. They opened private mail and broke into homes to find incriminating publications and all. The APL reported 3 million cases of disloyalty. So these fucking tyrants were going after anti-war critics. There was also the undermining of the First Amendment in every way, shape, and form. The Espionage Act was used to imprison Americans who opposed the war, including the Socialist Party chief Eugene Debs. After visiting 3 anti-draft activists in jail, Debs spoke in an anti-war rally across the street. They tell us we live in a free, great republic. We are a free and self-governing nation that is too much even for a joke. You're under arrest, Debs. And then they ended up arresting him too. What the fuck? Well, Mr. Debs, you ought to like this bunch of wobblies and agitators. It is my honor to share these humble quarters with members of the industrial workers of the world. Fellow worker Debs, I remember you from the founding convention of the IWW back in 1905. Won't you join us in a patriotic song? I love my flag, I do, which floats upon the breeze. I also love my arms and legs, and neck, and nose, and knees. One little shell might spoil them all, or give them such a twist. There would be no use to me, I guess I won't enlist. I am my singing, yeah, that's my singing. That's my singing, everybody. The country's jails are filling up with anti-war wobblies. In Sacramento, more than 50 wobs were jammed into a small, filthy cell. Some died before jail. It's not just us wobs. Thousands of conscientious objectors imprisoned in an army concentration camp near Manhattan, Kansas, called Camp Funston. Oh yeah, Camp Funston's gonna be real fun, all right. Camp Funston, named after Brigadier General Frederick Funston, the man who captured Aguinaldo in the Philippine War. The camp was under the command of a familiar figure, General Leonard Wood, veteran of the Geronimo campaign, former military governor of Cuba and the Philippines, responsible for the Morro massacre. They treated us like dogs in that place. I was there once. I saw them torture prisoners. There was a man named Sheldon Smith. He was a brave soul. He even refused to put on a prison uniform. If you don't sign this receipt for your uniform, I'll make you wish you had. They hung Smith and a couple others from the water pipes in the showers and scrubbed them raw with brooms. Oh my fucking god. So basically these fucking pieces of shit were torturing them. Then the guards began beating them with belts. Like, hiya, hiya, hiya. Oh my god, fucking scumbags. I'd call them animals, but that would be an insult to animals. Then they made Smith bend down and kiss the flag. Father of Funston prisoner wrote, General Wood, you do not deny certain atrocities committed upon conscientious objectors by guards under your command, which out Prussianize the worst of the Prussians. General Wood wrote back, COS are opposing the government in the efforts is making to crush autocracy. But the COS weren't all wobs and socialists. Thousands of them were religious pacifists, like our Mennonite friend up there. Hundreds of my brethren were at Camp Funston. The treatment was so bad, many agreed to some form of military duty. The government was sometimes startled at the outpouring of religious pacifists who made public donations of non-corporation. It was thought the authorities didn't know their own country. They didn't know so many of us existed. Yeah, they sure didn't, and that was their first fucking mistake. In another prison at Fort Riley, Kansas, a dozen of Oklahoma Mennonites were punished for refusing to carry out a work detail. They refused to cut down a sunflower 10 feet from the camp. 4 German pietists, like the Mennonites, the sunflower turned its face all day to follow the path of the sun as the symbol of faith. I'm a Melukin. We are a pacifist breakaway sect from the Russian Orthodoxy. On a blistering day in June of 1917, 34 of our young men paraded through Phoenix, Arizona with their families and presented themselves at the Maricopa County Courthouse. They prayed in the 110-degree sun before entering the court, telling astonished spectators that they were prepared for martyrdom. Afterwards, the men were turned over to the army, court-martialed, and sent to Leavenworth prison. At Leavenworth, the government continued to persecute the religious. The Duchovers were another Russian sector. So this was basically the beginning of the Red Scare. The Red Scare that continues today, especially fucking today. Except this is the neocons doing it. Well, it was both sides too, but today, it's especially the neoliberals. The old man died and his widow was told to pick up his body. To humiliate his family, the army dressed him in a military uniform. What a bunch of fucking scumbags. So you're just going to make it worse for the family and do that? Wow, fuck you. You're a fucking piece of shit. Peaceful protest against this criminal war began as early as August 1914, when 1,500 women dressed in black marched down Fifth Avenue in New York against the war. In 2003, women organized against the Iraq War under the name Code for Pink for Peace. They sure did. Even in prison, anti-war activists continue to fight. So basically, all the ones that are getting put in prison just ended up rallying around. It was like a creation of more and more. Because the more you were putting in prison, it was just, you were sending the message all around, even in prison. So this is what happens when you act like a dictatorship. That's what happens. Your critics in your dictatorship prison end up spreading the word. You try to suppress them, it only backfires. The window above the cell was kept closed, making the conditions intolerable. Air, we need air. I'm sick of over here. Yeah, out of here. Air. All right, ladies, you're coming with us. Air. And then she threw a book, and then it crashed through the window. Yay, air at last. God bless you, Katie. So she basically broke a window to get some air in that entire fucking prison complex, which was basically just a box. A torture box. I see a window out there. Anyone got a book? Women's anti-war activism also galvanized for their struggle for the vote. Just remember what happened to Alice Paul. Throughout 1917, the National Women's Party picketed the White House, demanding that President Wilson support a woman's right to vote. Mr. President, how long must women wait for their liberty? Alice Paul was one of the more radical members of the suffragist movement. Wilson is a hypocrite. He's fighting a war in Europe to make the world safe for democracy, but won't give us the right to vote here. Isn't it funny? Isn't it funny? The same shit happened here, just like today. Fighting a war in another country, but not giving a shit for people at home. Ooh, that sounds like Biden fighting for Ukraine, but not helping East Palestine. Wow. Boy, there were shitty leaders then and shitty leaders now. Fighting proxy wars and not caring about the people. Isn't that telling? Things were quiet until the U.S. entered the war. Now it's getting ugly. Look out. President Wilson is getting violent over there. Then start throwing splat. I'm losing patience with these women. Arrest them for something. They had to come up with a reason to try to arrest them? What the fuck? Basically trying to come up with reasons to arrest actual protesters. And yes, these are actual women's protests. These are not like color revolutions like the ones that are going on in Iran. Wilson's arrests increased, but the picketing didn't stop. Yeah, they just had the opposite effect. Finally, the police arrested the leader, Alice Paul. She was sentenced to 7 months in prison and placed in solitary confinement. I'm afraid her diet of bread and water is taking its toll. I'm moving her to the prison hospital. Paul had already served a prison term in Britain, where she learned about the hunger strike and tactic to demand the women's vote. I refused to eat. It's the strongest weapon I have. The doctors transferred her to a psychiatric ward, claiming she was insane, but she continued her hunger strike. Yeah, because you drove her insane. What the fuck? Of course, she wasn't insane. You drove her insane. That's what happened. She still won't eat. At this rate, I'm afraid she might die. Force feed her. Despite her weakness and the pain of the force feeding, Paul refused to end her hunger strike there. Well, good for her. Other suffragists joined the hunger strike. Abuses accelerated, and press reports began to enrage the public. Support for the suffrage grew. Finally, Alice and the other suffragists were released from jail in November 1917. On January 18, 1918, President Wilson announced his support for the suffrage amendment. So you see, these protests do work. Story time's over, Debs. They want to see you in court. Your Honor, the government charges Mr. Debwood criticizing the war in front of draft-age youth. A clear violation of the Espionage Act. Your Honor, I refuse to take the stand in my own defense or call any witnesses on my behalf. I will address the jury directly. For nearly 2 hours, Deb eloquently stated his love of humanity and hate for war. You and me both. I have been accused of obstructing the war. I admit it. I abhor war. I still oppose it if I would stand alone. I have sympathy for the suffering people everywhere. It doesn't make any difference under what flag they were born or where they live. 100%. His argument had no effect. The jury found Eugene Debs guilty. At sentencing, he addressed the judge. Your Honor, years ago, I recognized my kinship with all living things, and I made up my mind that I was not one bit better than the poorest person on earth. Well, there was a lower class, I'm in it. Well, there was criminals class, I'm in it. Well, there's a soul in prison, I'm not free. 10 years! Debs ran for president in 1920 from the Atlanta Penitentiary. He took up his own district even though the prisoners' vote didn't count. On December 25th, 1921, President Warren G. Harding released Debs from prison, commuting his sentence to time served. Debs died in 1926. Well, may he rest in peace. Of the 1 million votes cast nationwide, he called the prison votes the most precious. Another important opponent of World War I was Emma Goldman. She organized World War I rather was Emma Goldman. She organized the No Conscription League. Goldman was tried under the Conscription Act, sentenced to 2 years at the Missouri State Penitentiary. Just like Debs, her only defense was her eloquence. A democracy conceived in the military servitude of the masses and not democracy at all. It's despotism. Yeah, it is. When I discovered Emma Goldman, I wrote a play about her called Emma. I imagined the courageous woman emerging after 2 years in prison, haggard but incisive as always. Miss Goldman, are you accusing business interests of benefiting from the war? Well, working class got nothing from it. They never do. When the smoke of the battle was gone, the cost of war came home to the families in higher prices. Have you decided that this war to change through the ballot box? The ballot box, when Rockefeller wants oil refinery, does he take a vote? When McKinley wants the Philippines, does he take a vote? Can we quote you on all of this? Will your newspaper print all of this? People like Emma Goldman became folk heroes to immigrant workers in New York tenements. This is the world to which I was born in. Well, that's the end of that chapter, and I will be reading, that's the end of chapter 4, and I will be reading chapter 5 coming up. Growing up a class conscious, what child who is loved knows he is poor. That's the next chapter, and I will be reading that in the next one. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Hope you enjoyed the remainder of that chapter in this reading reading series. Thank you for watching. I'll see you all in the next one, and more stuff on the way. This is Zach, the Celtics guy, saying thank you for watching, and I'll see you all in my next stream Thursday at 7 p.m. Look out for it. Stay safe, stay well, stay classy. Thank you, Nicholas, again for recommending this book to me. Always, brother. I really appreciate it. See you all in the next one. Stay safe, stay well, stay classy, and keep fighting. And keep on rocking. Till next time. Peace out, have a good day, and so long.